On this edition of Let's Explore This, we are going to be covering the borough of Spotswood. Spotswood is a small village nestled along the confluence of the Manalapan and the Machaponix brooks that form the South River in southern Middlesex County. So, this here is the South River. Why don't we now take a look at the other two brooks? This here is the Machaponix Brook, a vantage point that shows the confluence of it and the Manalapan Brook is not the easiest spot to access. It's down in that direction, however. This here is the Manalapan Brook. In fact, this road here is not called Manalapan for nothing. It runs just about parallel with Manalapan Brook on its way to Spotswood. Here, Manalapan Road reaches its intersection with Main Street. The Main Street line just about cuts Spotswood in half. The southern boundary of the borough, which is what major towns in New Jersey are called, is mostly defined by the two brooks that form the South River. The exception is that small part that runs across those few southern roads. The far western boundary, which lies more to the southwest, is defined by a line running a bit west of Daniel Road to the south and Marlborough Avenue to the north. Spotswood, it is further bordered on the northwest by Jamesburg County Park and Crescent Avenue, essentially the northwestern extension of Main Street. The easternmost boundary, it is defined by Duherna Lake at the southernmost end, a section of railroad track below Main Street at the center, and the rear lots of properties along the western side of Cleveland Avenue, and finally, the northernmost boundary. It is defined simply by a stretch of old stage road. This here is the website from which most of the information for this episode will be culled. It seems to hold a detailed historical sketch of the borough of Spotswood, probably one of the most detailed to be easily found online. Now, this episode, it is not going to put this entire website to video, but will put at least 2 pages and portions of others to video. And then we have this here, the cover of the book, simply titled Spotswood, by Bruce Ekman, Jack Eichenlaub, and Roy Day Jr. It is essentially a photo essay. A few of the photos incorporated into this episode, as well as some scattered information, will also be coming from this book. And as usual, as with all of these episodes, the website URLs for all sources used will be included at the end of the episode. And with that said, let's get a move on. Surrounded by pine trees and wetlands, the natural resources within the vicinity of Spotswood provided a basis for two sawmills operated by a prominent Native American sachem named Weequahala, which developed into a major industrial complex in the years preceding the American Revolution. This here is a close-up of John Reed's 1685 map of the Raritan River area. Now, for those of you that do not know, this river here, the South River, it is a tributary of the Raritan River. Anyway, John Reed was a surveyor for the Board of East Jersey Proprietors. He was rewarded for his work with a grant of land on the Hope River in Monmouth County, which he named Hortense. Now, I think Hope River, it may be referencing Hop Brook, as no Hop or Hope River can be found. Not entirely sure, but the South River here is at the center, with its two main tributaries coming together at what would become the village of Spotswood by the 1750s. The Indian sachem Weequahala, he sold land at the headwaters of the Manalapan Brook and the Millstone River to Reed. Those headwaters, they are located in this area, which is well outside the boundaries for this episode. No traveling there today, but the roundabout peninsula along the Raritan River, it was an important rendezvous for Native Americans and colonists in the late 17th century. When Reed made this map, the Manalapan, the Machaponix, and similar streams were still the residents of the Delaware Indians, including Weequahala. At the time, there were Indian settlements at present-day Princeton, Cranberry, Spotswood, and elsewhere. The last Indian claims to these lands were given up by treaty in 1758. The village of Spotswood, it would take root at the confluence of the Manalapan and the Machaponix brooks only after Johnston's Mill was established there by the 1740s. Yes, you can read all about the Johnstons here. Prior to the Johnston era, the Manalapan Brook, it provided water power for a series of mills, beginning with the two operated by the sachem Weequahala. This area here, reportedly, it was once known as White's Landing. Located near this here, the South River Bridge, or the Old Bridge, which may have been the point where transshipment of goods occurred from the mill seat to the South River by way of the road that once connected both points south of this here South River across the Machaponix as shown on this here, the 1850 map of Spotswood. This here is a section of the website that talks about a property transfer. I am almost certain this part here is lifted from a deed. Regardless, the name of Cow Houses Bridge, is another name that may be able to be connected historically. You see, this bridge, I believe, references this here, the crossing on present-day Spotswood Road, across the brook which empties the burnt meadow into Devoe Lake. Burnt meadow, it appears to be a geographical term, one that appears to rarely, if ever, be used anymore for an area over there, maybe. That over there is Devoe Lake. Burnt meadow, it could possibly be a reference to this crossing, but I doubt this would be the Spotswood Road being mentioned. I am more inclined to believe that would be what is today Devoe Avenue. I suspect Cowhouse's Bridge to be the one right down there. Records are said to indicate that long before the American Revolution, members of the Perry, Cohen, and Hayes families were living on the property depicted in this photograph. During their tenure, a forge was operated on the site. Yes, the bridge in this photo appears to have been where this one right here now stands. Regardless, in the 18th century, the brook was known as Indian Brook, and in the 19th century, it was known as the Gulf Brook. Wait a minute. Manalapan Brook? Indian Brook? That can't be right. Something's off here. Okay, so they mean to tell me that old Spotswood Road, it is referencing this area here, denoted by what is today Spotswood Avenue? Just look where that is on this map. Yeah, all the way along the southern reaches of Devoe Lake. So, could that be why Erickson Avenue, which turns into Spotswood Avenue, is the only through road below the lake? You know, I guess I could be wrong, but where Erickson Avenue on this map makes a sharp bend over a stream that empties into Devoe Lake, that is the stream that has been known historically as both Indian Brook and Gulf Brook. So that bridge was here? It does kind of appear so. And so, apparently, that Cowhouse's Bridge, it appears not to have been over the Manalapan, but rather down that-a-way, a mile or so. You see, this here is the historic 1760 map of the area, and it does show the same road. And so, apparently, this was the old route, that old Spotswood Road. And on this map, reportedly, Weequahalla's house is the one circled right there. That would put the house right over there to the west of the creek somewhere. It is said that this house does exactly match the deed and survey references to Weequahalla's house. And deeds continued to refer to that house well into the late 1700s. However, Don't go looking for it today in 2023. It was no longer standing by 1850. Even if you were alive in the early 1900s, you would not be able to find it. Still, though, this site today is now part of a modern subdivision. However, reportedly, elements of that old house, and I guess maybe even its outbuildings, may still be extant within the area. Okay, well, that could possibly be stretching hope a bit too far. 1850. It's now 2023. The house is said to have been gone by 1850, and just under 1 3/4 years, would elements of a said-to-be-gone house still be found? Possibly, but more likely doubtful. Well, this here is the closest house to that little creek right down there. And so, does this house hold any secrets? Old remnants of that old Wickwahalla home? Yes, inquiring minds want to know. Was it in another house, or does any house here hold such a secret? Regardless, that bridge, the Cowhouse's Bridge, was later referred to as the Slab Bridge. The name of Cowhouses, it may be a version of Quain Heathcliff's, sorry if I did not pronounce that correctly, which was the home of Wickwahalla, referred to in several of his deeds. As far as where the name of Spotswood comes from, it goes something like this. But first, look at all the geese. That's a lot of geese. So, tell me, do any of you geese want to play duck, duck, goose? I guess not. I'll just have to move on. Confusion as to the name of Spotswood appears to come from two sources. The first appears to come from letters written by the early proprietor, James Johnston. The name Spotswood appeared in some of his letters. This, however, was referring not to the Spotswood here. In William A. Whitehead's contributions to the early history of Perthemboy and adjoining country, the following can be found. In 1684, James, and in 1685, John Johnstone brothers arrived in the province from Scotland. They first settled in Monmouth County, near the present site of Spotswood, to which it is presumed he gave its name, as he had resided in Spotswood, in Scotland. However, reportedly, that presumption made by Whitehead is incorrect. While there was a Spotswood tract of land laid out on Reed's 1685 map of Monmouth County, with the three local streams named the Spotswood North, Middle, and South Brooks, it was not settled by James Johnston. In his letters found in the model of the government of the province of East New Jersey, published in 1685, there is the direct and affirmative statement by James Johnston that his plantation was at the Blue Hills, today better known as the Watchungs. He wrote his brother from there in March of 1684. Neither James nor John owned land in the Manalapan River or Manalapan Brook area at that time. Credit should be given to his nephews, Andrew and Lewis, who bought the mill stand on the Manalapan in 1731, and who provided the transition between Indian ownership to the more successful milling operations of Ten Eyck, Corn, and finally Perry, Hayes, and Sherbrooke. The words more successful, I must say, should be omitted here, as it insinuates white folk are more successful than Indian folk. And even if white folk were more successful than Indian folk, which technically could be argued, it still does not take into account the differences of operations. Indians did not mass produce or even do business in the same way as whites. Therefore, any ascription of more successful here is flawed. Anyhow, it was likely the influence of the Johnston brothers that led to the naming of the locale as Spotswood. Overall, though, little was known of the Spotswood area's earliest history, with only scattered and incomplete memories forming the basis for the understanding of Spotswood's past. The primary responsibilities of a historian, are to be as accurate and as thorough as possible. You see, too much folklore has been accepted as history, and the result is that the beauty and eloquence of the truth has been obscured by needless embellishments. One immediate example is that ongoing assertion that Spotswood was founded in 1685 by James Johnston. This piece of folklore is due to the misinterpretation of some letters written by him. You see, Spotswood, as a place name for the village, does not appear until the mid-18th century. Prior to that, it was usually referred to as Johnston's Mills. Even Weequahalla's amazing legacy was corrupted into a handed-down story which claimed him to be a half-breed named McQueely. In 1727, Weequahalla was found guilty of murdering a local colonist, John Leonard, and was executed in Perthemboy. A portion of his extensive plantation was claimed by Leonard's widow and sold, while the remaining lands were deeded away in 1739. The land, it encompasses 2.5 miles of the Manalapan and the South River waterways, the future site of subsequent industries. In fact, the story of the Spotswood Mills centers on the South River watershed in southern Middlesex County. This here, the South River, it is a major tributary, as said earlier, of the Raritan River of central New Jersey, flowing into the latter just before it enters the Raritan Bay, which forms part of the New York Harbor. Throughout history, the South River and Raritan estuaries have provided easy transportation for people living and working in the area, from Native American trading activities at the roundabout of Edison and Sayreville to Revolutionary War whaleboat warriors to ship captains flying lumber and produce to New York, these rivers have been important resources. The South River, it is formed in present-day Spotswood by the confluence of, yes, the Machaponix and Manalapan brooks. The actual confluence, though, it appears to be right near the waters of that lake over there, Duhernal Lake. This here is a map. This is Duhernal Lake. This is Devoe Lake. The two lakes are not the same and should not be confused. The name Duhernal, it is derived from the three firms that created the lake: DuPont, Hercules, and National Lead.
By the way, aside from Duhernal Lake itself and Devoe Lake, hidden away in some of the backwoods of Spotswood, you might come across a couple of other lakes or reservoirs, such as the one you're seeing right here.
In those two streams, the Manalapan Brook and the Machaponix Brook, both originate in Middlesex County, flow past the Spotswood patent in present-day Manalapan Township, and include numerous smaller streams that did play important roles in the industrial development of this region. And such industrial activities, they included grist mills, paper mills, though this one shown here came much later. In the 19th and 20th centuries, tobacco and snuff mills were present. Yes, this does show an actual artifact from the old Leonard Appleby Railroad mills, which had ties to this, the Helm Snuff Mill, located in Helmeda, only a couple of miles southwest of Spotswood. This episode, it is going to review the development of three distinct sets of mills located in the Spotswood area. Going from west to east, or as the Manalapan flows, they are as follows: Swin Forge, Outcults Mill, and the Spotswood Mills. Now, the Manalapan Brook in this area was first used to power two sawmills operated, as said earlier, by an important Indian sachem, Wickwala. His life does bridge the time period from the meager colonization of New Jersey by the proprietors in the late 1600s to the ever-expanding colonial population witnessed just before his death in 1727. His plantation and house were the key reference points for deeds and surveys for the next 50 years. Wickwahala's sawmills were located at what was to become Outcults Mill, located down there, and the Spotswood Mills, located right near here. Now you can read this 1739 deed from the Indians to the Johnstons on your own time, 'cause I now have to move on to the colonial era and beyond. This here is a 1796 map by Evert Van Wickel, showing the famous mill seat on present-day Devoe Avenue. This here is the Spotswood Bridge. It is essentially present-day Devoe Avenue. The Sawmill Dam is still the site of the dam on Devoe Lake, most of the colonial mills had been destroyed both during the American Revolution and a subsequent fire, but rebuilt by 1787. Now, folks, we must look for a peach house, I guess a peach-colored house.
Okay. I can't be certain if this is the correct area, but over here, where all those houses stand, tell me, do you see a peach house or a peach-colored house? Yeah, not really. The only one that might come close to being peachy might be that one. Just maybe. I don't know if I'd call that peach-colored, but it's the closest one out of all the others over here. Of course, when that info was written, someone could have since painted the house or resided it or something, so it might not even look like it used to look. I don't know. Or maybe it's over there. Not exactly certain. I know one thing. I don't really have the time to go peach hunting. Nope, not today. But a peach house?
Why? Well, reportedly, there is, or recently was, a peach house on the site. The mill building at the site of the grist mill is the one from the previous decades and was to be rebuilt as the old red mill in the early 19th century. But a mill building still stands? Is that what I read correctly? Where? Anyhow, that old red mill, the one shown here, it stood until the early 20th century. According to W. Woodford Clayton's 1882 book, History of Union and Middlesex Counties, a clear title to the Forge Company Mill seat finally passed in 1796, when it was auctioned off and sold to Daniel Lott for £1,275. The county sheriff sold the property again in 1801 to Robinson Thomas. And in 1819, title to half was purchased by John H. Disborough. He acquired the remaining half interest in 1827. His name does appear conspicuously on this 1850 historic Spotswood map. His house, if being the one circled here, would have been over there somewhere. It may have incorporated remnants of the Pankridge mansion house described in the Loyalist claim of Perry Hayes in Sherbrooke.
Hey, look. Is that a peach-colored house? It kind of does look a bit peachy. Could that be that peach-colored house discussed a bit earlier? Anyhow,
The lower sawmill of Weequahalla's old complex, it became first Johnston's Mills, the Corns in the 1760s, and for a time just prior to the Revolution, Pankridge Forge. Pankridge, it was operated by the impressive commercial firm of Perry Hayes in Sherbrooke. Apparently, either on site or, I guess, somewhere nearby, stood the Pankridge Mansion House.
okay. So, along this road here, between the road and the sidewalk, what in the world is this? I think some long pole or something may go in there. Not sure why or what for, though I have the faintest idea why that's here. Maybe you do. Leave a comment in the talkie section. I have to move on.
Do you see this bridge right here? Yeah, the one on this here Devoe Avenue that spans Manalapan Brook? Well, this here is a historic photo of the bridge that used to be here in 1906, taken 2 years prior to the incorporation of Spotswood. Not long before this picture was taken, the metal bridge you see in this pic had replaced a wooden structure. That building there in the background, well, that was the old Red Mill. Now, the Pankridge Grist Mill, it was located at what would later be known as the Old Red Mill. Photographs and maps are said to show this to be true. The forge, with its trip hammer illustrated on the margin of the missing original Forge Company map, was on or near the site of the sawmill shown on this circa 1850 Spotswood map. The original forge map, though, is missing. That old red mill? Yes, the one pictured here, according to Clayton, was built in the early 19th century by John Hilliker of Staten Island, on the site of the earlier grist mill. During its construction, a layer of cinders and scorched corn was dug up, denoting evidence of a fire. The fire was likely the one mentioned by D. Klein in his bill of complaint, and also in the 1786 newspaper notice describing the catastrophe, neither of which I was able to locate. Unfortunately, for the firm of Perry, Hayes, and Sherbrooke, the two principals lived in England during the Revolution, and Sherbrooke, he was an active loyalist. The extensive property, it was confiscated and sold during the war, but was the subject of litigation and claims for the next 20 years. Finally, by 1796, the property was auctioned off for the last time. It was purchased by local businessmen who transformed the mill seat into a center of snuff manufacturing. Located on Devoe Avenue, just south of Main Street. The old Red Mill was built of brick, not of wood, in order to minimize the risk of fire during the drying operation, which did involve the direct combustion of wood. Also, tobacco leaves were said to be dried on the brick structure at the front of this complex. And reportedly, during the American Revolution, the facility that was on this site, it manufactured paper and printed continental currency. After becoming the Spotswood paper mill, located on the Machaponix Brook, it was still in operation in 1821 when the property was acquired through auction by Phineas Mundy, Lewis Carman, and James Bishop. 4 years later, Mundy bought out his business partners and continued operating the paper mill. In 1854, he sold the site to Benjamin Skinner, who began the Tecumseh Snuff Mill. By 1910, according to a Sanborn Insurance Company map, the property was being used as a wood millwork factory. The ruins of that complex, reportedly, are still visible along the Machaponix. Really? Let's take a walk and see. Before we do that, though, according to this map, the location of Spotswood Mills, later called Grey Stone Woodwork, and being located along the Machaponics, may have been around here, and not here. This area here that I have been showing a lot in reference to Spotswood Mills, according to this map, came to be the DeVoe Snuff Mill. More on that before this episode is over. And then we have this Monday Avenue turning into Greystone Road. This here is Greystone Road, which holds one of the names of the old complex. I guess I can find the time to do a short trek around here.
Okay, well, there will not be much to cover on this side. Basically, it's just a small track between the lake and the brook. And on the other side is large swaths of private property, as well as not much in the way of discernible trails. That probably would require lots of bushwhacking. However, on the other side of the road, it's a much different story.
Given this is a large area, though, I do not have the time to go too far in. Let's just see, though, if any remnants of that old mill complex can be found within the more immediate vicinity.
Here we have very discernible trails. Now, as I said, I do not have a lot of time to do much hiking on this episode, so I am not going to show you too much on the way to, I don't know, wherever I might end up. If I find something that might have been a part of the old mill, 'cause this is a vast area here, as said, I don't have the time to go too far in. For this trek, I can only give myself about, I don't know, 15 minutes to a half hour of a walk in. But if I do see anything that might reference the possibility of a mill having once been around here, or anything else for that matter that might be a bit unique, I will show it to you. If I do not see anything, then, well, I will just have to move on. Wow, not too far in at all. I did find something. Not sure of what is up there, if it is indicative of an old mill site, but there is definitely something in the woods up there. It is some kind of structure, like up over there on that hill. Let's get a closer look. Right away, on to this road leading up to the structure, I see what looks like the remnants of an old road. I mean, it's got a guardrail. Why would that be back here when there's no vehicles back here? At least anymore, even if there ever was. Well, here we are. Actually, maybe vehicles can come up here. On the other side of that guardrail is a road. So, as I said, there are a lot of discernible trails back here. Although, the way this guardrail looks, it looks like, my guess is that at one time, there was a road probably over here somewhere, because of the way it's facing. Maybe it was right here where I am walking. If that's true, it's now overgrown. But over to this here, it does look like it's like a pump house or something. There is possibly an electrical substation, a very small one, over there. So maybe this is used to power that? Not sure. But it could, I guess, have been a part of the mill. Yes, it's definitely made of brick. It kind of looks a bit old, and behind it we've got... Wow, what do we have over here? More barriers? It looks like something that could have been along a trail, or maybe even a barricade to stop cars from entering. I don't know, a trailhead or something. And over here, we've got a pipe. I wonder, was this stuff, or some of this stuff, a part of that old mill complex? Could all or some of this here have been a part of the old Spotswood mills? I don't know. What else might we find back here? I've got some time left, so let me take a bit further of a walk back there and see. So now I am a little bit of a ways in. There were a couple of more of those pump house thingies. You know, though, you seen one, you seen them all, but here we have something else down there. Now, that's not attached to any kind of power lines or anything. Let's take a closer look to see what that might be. Wow, it's a dam. There's a dam way back here. I guess it could have been used by the mill at some point. Did they dam up the Machaponix Brook? Not sure of its use. Just speculating. Okay, folks. I think I have went far enough. Probably about maybe half a mile in, maybe a little less. Not sure. I did not calculate the distance. Regardless, here the trail makes a sharp turn. I did not exactly find any significant remnants. I guess significant stuff of an old mill. Yeah, a couple of structures, a few strewn around blocks. Yes, I did find some stuff. I did find that dam a ways down that way. But beyond that, I did find something. Probably not the something you would expect. But in order for you to see that something, we need to go over there. Now, I'm going to warn you, this one is a bit strange. So, just bear with me here.
There is a fairly good-sized lake back here, way back in the woods, not visible from any road, and not sure why it's here. I am assuming probably it's not technically a lake, but some kind of reservoir. Was it created by DuPont, Hercules, or National Lead, who created Duhernal? Was this used by the mill for water? I will admit this is probably not exactly within the borders of Spotswood. I think I'm kind of outside of the borders, but nonetheless, it does kind of seems like it's coming off the Machaponix Brook. This is a bit of a strange find way back here. Maybe it's natural, but I don't think so. And there was that dam back there. That dam is probably responsible for backing up the waters back here and creating this lake. The question is, why was this created? You can probably take an educated guess after watching this episode. But still, there is no certainty. Maybe it was created for something else. Probably had some kind of industrial reasoning behind it. Not sure. All I know is it's back here. This actually is what I wanted to take the hike for. But now, time is running out, and I need to get back to the road to move on. By the 1920s, the mills were in ruins, and the memory of the Indian and colonial history of the site became a vague and confused recollection. Now, the next two mills will be discussed only briefly, as they barely lie within the Spotswood borders, but they are important to the larger area. Outcolt, for example, is listed on many maps as a distinct community. It is therefore eligible to receive its own episode. Swin Forge, the Upper Forge. It was established in the 1760s. It was located here, near the Helmetta and Monroe area. Likely, Old Forge Road, this road right here. It takes its name from the old Swin Forge complex that has not stood for decades. And Old Forge Road, it was officially laid out in 1803, although it did replace an earlier one in the vicinity. In fact, those old roads, they catered not to automobiles. No, they catered to horse-drawn buggies. Though not a pic of Old Forge Road per se, this photo of the long-gone West End Hotel dates from the late 1800s. In fact, according to this book, it stood right here at the site of the present-day Methodist Church. The building, reportedly, was of all-wood construction in which wooden dowels were used. Sounds a bit like timber framing. This is another photo taken from back in the horse-drawn buggy days, this one being of the Underhill General Store. Once located near this intersection with Main Street and Summerhill Road, the Underhill General Store delivered food orders and other necessities of life to nearby farmers, long before the days of Uber Eats and DoorDash. And buggies, like the one you see here, some, maybe even many, were built here in this carriage factory. It is said to have stood to the rear of this auto dealership.
To the rear? I wonder where it might be or would have been. Like, is that it there? Or is this house here it? Or have they demolished it? Not sure.
And part of this building, it reportedly still stands. The carriage factory manufactured the prime mode of transportation during the 1800s. Furthermore, farmers bought their plows and wagons here to be repaired. I guess Pep Boys wasn't invented yet. This here is a house, and this here is Klein Avenue, Victoria Avenue, Dora Avenue, and Sydney Avenue. You see, all these roads, they have something in common. When Spotswood and East Brunswick were divided between 1840 and 1852, this house here, it became part of Spotswood. The Klein family, who grew eggplants as a crop, originally owned this house. And now, back to Swin Forge and Old Forge Road. Old Forge Road, it ran from Mount's Mill in Jamesburg to the road leading to Bennett's Mill, a sawmill reportedly shown on an 1801 survey map that I did not locate. The route drawn here, it is likely not to be exact, though Mounts Mills appears to have been located southeast of Jamesburg. And the site of Swin Forge? Well, it was never used for industrial purposes again. So Swin Forge, it had passed into history. At least the road is still here.
I will say this, though. If you want to go looking on either side of Old Forge Road, over there, or over here, I will warn you, it's probably going to be like finding a needle in a haystack, if such a needle would even exist anymore in 2023. But you can be my guest and try searching for the remnants of that long, long gone Swin Forge complex in this vast open space. I certainly do not have the time for that. I have to move on.
Then, by the 1820s, the site of Weequahalla's upper sawmill was reactivated in the form of Outcult's Mill. That area, it eventually became the site of a physical health community at the turn of the 20th century. As for Outcult's Mill, reportedly, the remains of it are still visible to this day. Lake Marguerite, however, the local nearby lake, is long gone.
Okay, folks, I am behind the VFW building here, right at the border of the Outcult vicinity, and apparently the Spotswood Water Department also has a little structure over here. The reason I am here is, well, once again, I do not have a whole lot of time to do a lot of hiking around here, but there is something back here that might be worth a view. So let's see. We need to go back here. Do not ask me how I know about this, what you're going to see. I just do. There's a little trail here. It is hidden from view. Most people do not know about it. Maybe some local people do. But you have to go behind the VFW to know about it. This is what I am talking about. This does look like an old dam of sorts, the remnants of it. And there is some other stuff down there. You can see that may have been the remains of an old boat ramp right here along the Manalapan Brook. Possibly. It sort of kind of looks like that. It is made of brick and stuff. That was not put here by nature. So, what is this? Well, you might have a fairly good idea. However, I will leave it up to your imagination. I'm not going to talk any further about it because technically for this episode, the Outcult area is kind of out of bounds. Sorry.
That sort of does it for the 3 mills. However, we're not exactly done with the mill talk just yet. There is one more mill that does need to be discussed. But first, we do need to talk about this. The Spotswood Railroad Depot. You see, the Camden and Amboy, the first railroad in the state, it did run through Spotswood. The first cars were drawn by 2 horses, which were replaced by a steam engine in 1833. A train car drawn by horses. I don't think I have ever seen one of those. Anyhow, This photo here, it looks to the west toward Snow Hill Street. This view shows the Pennsylvania Railroad Station platform. This station was located on the property now occupied by Jersey Pride. Therefore, it must have stood somewhere in this vicinity. By 2003, passenger service was long gone, and CNX... I wonder if that's supposed to be CSX? Not sure, but it was running only 2 freight trains per day, often awakening the local residents at 4 a.m. And this Spotswood station, it was removed in the 1960s. Overall, this railroad station, it was built by the Snow Hills, hence the name of this extension of Main Street. And this station was completed soon after the construction of the railway through Spotswood. It was maintained by William Snowhill and later kept up by his widow. Reportedly, there has been, in recent years, local talks of residents trying to revive passenger service. Now, folks, tell me, do you remember this map shown earlier? Well, it was located right here in this area. This here is, reportedly, a full-page advertisement and price list for the DeVoe Snuff Company from way back in 1896. According to this article, it was given the highest award at the World's Fair. The DeVoe Snuff Company, then, yeah, it must have been widely recognized. What we have here is an apparently unopened can of DeVoe's extra quality Scotch snuff. Not sure if it was made here, but probably. You see, Eagle Mills, owned and operated by Appleby and DeVoe, was, at one time, the leading commercial enterprise in Spotswood. Yes, at one time, Spotswood did appear to be spelled with not one, but 2 T's. This here is, in fact, an early view of the mill property, and this area, these days, holds what you see there, just a tad bit south of Main Street. The body of water pictured here, though, it was created by the paddle wheel driving the mill. It did not, at the time this picture was taken, cover an area as large as that lake right there, DeVoe or Spotswood Lake.
Prior to being the site of the DeVoe Mills, the area was first home to an iron forge that helped provide munitions to the British. Now,
Spotswood did develop as a mill town because of hydropower available at the local dam. The dam did create DeVoe Lake by holding up the waters of the Manalapan Brook. The original dam, though, it had a footbridge span to allow for pedestrian traffic. DeVoe Lake, as it can be seen today in 2023, however, was created for flood control as a Works Progress Administration project during the Great Depression. Here is another view of the mills, this one from the lake. Water flows rapidly under the building shown off to the right, spinning a paddle wheel and thus providing power for the mill and other operations. The modern-day concrete dam is visible on the left. Apparently, this is the last standing structure of the old Appleby DeVoe Eagle Mills in Spotswood. We need to find this building. So, this is the building today for the American Legion Post 253. It appears to be built of brick. This does not, although I guess bricks could be hidden beneath the wood siding. But it does appear to hold a similar length. Has this been turned into this? Or does this still exist somewhere near that lake right there? I don't know. Let's scan the area a bit.
Actually, we may not have to scan the area because, yes, the facade here does look like it is made of brick. However, a view from the side, it does show a much older building, I would think. And here, it kind of does look like it was, at one time, around way back in the day. And it does kind of, sort of, fit the description in the picture.
Okay, so you see this road right here? It's Latow Drive. So the name of that road does refer to this building. You see, this building, it was named after Herman R. Latow, who served as a councilman during the early years of Spotswood. The property now belongs to the borough and is leased to the American Legion for a nominal fee. Today, in 2023, this site, it is part of the lake recreational area. You know what else the name of this road refers to? No. Well, let me tell you. This house right here. Oh yes, the Latow House. The windmill on the property can be seen from the lake.
I am, with almost complete certainty, under the impression that this was the windmill. The actual windmill portion, though, looks like it has been removed, or fell, or something. It's just not there anymore. But I am almost positive, at one time, it did stand on that column you see right there.
It was used to pump running water into the house in the early 1800s. In its time, it was one of the largest homes in Spotswood. This colonial-styled house right here, it has direct ties to the old DeVoe Mills. It, too, the Augustus A. DeVoe House, is still standing today on the shore of DeVoe Lake. These days, this area, it is populated by many lakefront homes. During the pre-World War II era, though, there were only 3 houses located on the lake. One of the other 2, it was the one just mentioned, the Latow House.
As this sign here says, this area here is where this building, the Spotswood Hotel, once stood. Formerly known as Vliet's Hotel, it housed a bowling alley, a bar and grill, and a sporting goods store, after ceasing to house travelers at a very early date. Keeping in line with the name of Vliet,
what we have here is the Vliet House, likely located along Vliet Street, possibly near its intersection with Main Street. You see, when Spotswood became a borough, it was a placid little community, ranging for the most part along Main Street, which was lined with old, tall trees, and comfortable wood-framed houses, such as the one you see here, were built on spacious grounds. This house here, it was once part of the Clover Hill Farms, which was located here where the Immaculate Conception Church and School now stand. The Hazelhurst family once owned the estate, standing at a time when only 3 houses stood on the lake shore. You already know the other 2. The Letow house and the Devoe house. This is the 3rd. Okay, folks, do you know what this is? That's right. Yes, it's licorice. Looks yummy, doesn't it? Well, believe it or not, this kind of stuff, it was made in Spotswood, right here in the old licorice mill of the Bloomfield Mills Company. It had a wooden dam that supplied water to the machinery in the factory. The mill, it was abandoned in the 1920s, and licorice root, it could then be seen piled up 5 feet high around the abandoned building. We're coming closer to the end, but not just yet. Before we move on to a brief history of Spotswood's educational history, let's first, very briefly, talk about another once important industry that stood right there, the American Salpa Corporation. In 1941, it was sold to the Peter J. Schweitzer family. The Schweitzers had operated cigarette paper factories in New Jersey since World War I at locations such as Elizabeth. This plant, it was one of the few cigarette paper producing facilities in the eastern United States. It has continuously operated 3 shifts since it opened. It has been one of the largest employers of Spotswood residents for decades. For years, the reception after the Memorial Day Parade was held in the Schweitzer Private Picnic Grove. However, in 2020, yes, not all that long ago from when this episode was compiled, it was announced that the Schweitzer plant, it would be closing. Today, in 2023, the entire complex has been demolished. Virtually all milling activity has just about vanished from the region. And one could say a similar fate has also befallen the once prominent tourism industry. Yes, believe it or not, Spotswood, it did once have a prominent tourism industry, albeit small, but still prominent. Let me explain. One would be hard-pressed to find little, if even any, boats on the Manalapan Brook today in 2023. However, at the beginning of the 20th century, many families enjoyed boating along both the Manalapan and the Machaponix brooks. In fact, most of the homes near Devoe Lake were summer cottages with no heat. Many of these homes, they were built and sold by Elmer Appleby, for whom this here road, Elmer Avenue, is named. In fact, the Applebys, they were among the wealthiest families in the area. They owned land in this area since the early 1800s. This here is a photo of Mayor Arthur B. Appleby sitting with his wife at their home, somewhere on Main Street. Appleby owned and operated a general store directly across from his home. This here is a vintage photo of the Hun building, Hunn. Yes, this photo is far from new, however. The building, it does still stand. The building once held the Spotswood branch of the First National Bank of South River, and Helen's Cake Box, a bakery annex of the now shuttered Mendoker's Bakery of Jamesburg. Overall, Hun was a local business dealer who managed a Ford dealership on Main Street. And now, back to some resort history. So, this road here, it is Feldbaum Place. That's important because of this place, the Feldbaum Summer Resort. It was a boarding house type of vacation spot. Comprising 300 acres, the resort did include the small houses reportedly still standing on Feldbaum Place. Built in the early 1900s, the resort is said to have catered to Jewish vacationers, making it, according to the late David Feldbaum, whose grandfather owned it, ahead of the Catskills. There was, reportedly, a duck pond somewhere in the back that was used by local youths for skinny dipping. The main building, shown here in this picture, was later the Wysocki farmhouse. It was raised to make way for this. And that brings us to the next and final portion of this episode, the educational history of the borough. This here is a photo that dates way back to 1901. Yes, it's that old, and it is of the Spotswood Public School. And it stood right over there, across the street from St. Peter's Church.
And today, in 2023, it appears we have, I guess, little stores. Yeah, this is what is here today, in place of that old Birchall building. It does look like there's still a few things here for kids, like Kids in Caboodle. I wonder what goes on in there. And then, next to it, there's an Italian ice place. I mean, do adults really eat Italian ice? And over here, there is the New Jersey Dance Force, I guess a dance studio.
Now, some might be wondering, will the religious history of the borough be covered? No, this church is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and because of that, it is eligible for its own episode. It will not be covered here. But none of the schools are. Therefore, they are eligible for being covered here. And so, this early school building, as said, it was constructed in 1901. It was later renamed to honor longtime teacher Margaretta M. Birchall. Reportedly, this building was in use until the early 1970s. And here we have another photo of that early school building. It was expanded several times during the 20th century due to the growing student population. And the students in this photo? I wonder how old they must be today in 2023. Okay, so if this was the Birchall School, Did it somehow turn into this? I mean, this looks much different. So, if this was built in the early 1900s, what happened to this? Was this swiftly demolished for this to be built? Yes, inquiring minds do want to know. 'Cause, both were named the Birchall School. Regardless, this was said to later be unfit for use as a school building. Wow, it doesn't even exist anymore. Well, when it did exist, it came to serve as the Board of Education's administration offices. Then, in 1985, it was sold to Grace Hydrosco. Hydrosco operated her bus service with an 85 bus fleet for several years from the building that once stood here. In 1998, the land, it was sold to a private developer. Then, in 1999, whoever that was brought the two-story former school building down for good. Here we have the Appleby School. Remember the Principal Orlick? Well, the school, it was constructed in 1955 and named after E. Raymond Appleby. Appleby served the borough as a commissioner and member of the Board of Education for several years. This school was the second built to accommodate the baby boomers, and it was constructed to accommodate the adjacent Little League baseball field. Reportedly, after many windows were broken, that Little League field, it was moved to its present location here off Jackson Street. Wow. A Little League field, some nearby windows. I can see how that could be a problem. I bet it would keep the maintenance people busy.
Now, today, behind this here Appleby School, looking down the road here, there is what appears to be a ball field. But yeah, maybe it's the one used by this school, and not the one once used for Little League purposes. Regardless, they appear to still play ball around this school. I'm starting to feel sorry for the windows. Now, yes,
There are a couple of other schools in the area. Those, however, will not be discussed here. Sorry, time just does not permit going over everything. In fact, this episode, as it now stands, is going to be long enough. By the way, this here is the Spotswood High School. Cool, huh? Do you know what else is cool? Yeah, the library. However, it was not always housed in this building. Oh no, it was originally housed in this, the colonial-styled Spotswood Community House from the 1920s until circa 1970. In fact, the Appleby D. Steele Foundation purchased this 1783 house with the goal of establishing a library. In 1969, the building was deemed to be structurally unsound. Apparently, it was so structurally unsound that in 1971, this happened. A fire. And because of that, this building, yeah, it no longer stands. As far as the library, well, in 1973, this present 4,000 square foot library was dedicated, a prefabricated construction built upon the site of that old community house. Well, that just about does it for the borough of Spotswood in Middlesex County, New Jersey. What was that? What else might there be in Middlesex County? Oh man, I don't know. Lots of stuff. See you on the next episode.